Welcome back to another episode of Tea After Midnight. Just a little series where we have some tea to keep it nice and classy, but I also tell you scary stories. Out of all of the folklore in the Appalachian Mountains, the topic of tonight's story is actually something I've never heard about. So with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachia story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. My friend Tori found this at TJ Maxx and she got it for me, and it is absolutely stunning. This is Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night on a cup. Absolutely beautiful. So Tori, if you're watching, thank you so much again for this cup. It is absolutely beautiful and I'm so excited to use it. This story comes from Clay. Hey Savannah, my name is Clay and I currently live in the Appalachian Mountains and I have my entire life. Growing up here, we would always hear scary stories about the creatures and cryptids in these mountains. I remember sitting on the front porch while my granddad would tell us kids spooky stories to pass time. As I got older, I didn't really read too much into these stories as I just thought it was folklore. That was, of course, until a few summers ago where I had my own encounter, and I truly believe all of the stories my granddad told us. One story he would always tell us was about a booger in the woods. So if you don't know, booger is another term in Appalachia that's used to describe like a creature or a monster in the woods. He would say that it looked like a deer, but wasn't. He called it a not deer. The way he would always explain it made us kids super scared. He said that from a distance it looked like a deer, but when you got closer, there were certain parts of it that didn't look quite right, and that it would walk on its hind legs like a human. Its knees were bent in weird angles and its eyes set directly in front of its face, not off to the side like a typical deer. And again, I never really thought too much of it or really believed in it until a few summers ago. It was nighttime and I was driving back home from my parents' house. I have driven on this road many times and have never seen any animals other than maybe a rabbit. But this night was different. This road is very windy and it's a good ways off in the mountains. I'm listening to music with my two front windows rolled down because my AC in my truck was out. It was pretty hot that night, so rolling my windows down was the only option I had for fresh air. I get to a part in the road that was a very deep curve, and I started to feel really panicked. I have never felt a feeling of dread so heavy in my life. I'm almost through the curve when something hit my windshield so hard, I stopped the truck in the middle of the road. I look up at the windshield to make sure there wasn't a crack, and thankfully there wasn't, but I was still pretty startled. I was thinking to myself that somebody had thrown something at my truck as I was driving. While I'm sitting there, I hear some rustling in the woods to my left. When I turned to look, I could faintly see glowing eyes in the woods that looked like an animal based on the height. But that's when the animal stood up on its hind legs and started walking towards the front of my truck. It didn't come directly in front of my truck, just walked in the wood line toward the front of my truck. The closer it got to the front of my truck, I could see it better because of my headlights. This animal looked like a deer, but it was definitely not a deer. It walked a good 10 feet on its hind legs, and when I could get a good look at it, the joints in its knees looked wrong. Like they shouldn't be bending that way. Its fur was mangy with a dark reddish-brown like liquid dripping off of it. I could hear it breathing, it was so close to me. And the breathing sounded very wrong. It honestly sounded like a person wheezing. That is the best way that I can describe it. I immediately thought I needed to get out of there, so I start driving off, but this thing starts following me, and it doesn't start running on all fours. It was running on its hind legs, chasing me. I eventually passed it, but I could see it in the rearview mirror on the road, chasing me on its hind legs. I speed up as fast as I can, but again, this is a pretty windy road, so I have to slow down when I get into a curve so I don't flip. I get around a few curves thinking I had lost it, when I look out my right side window and see it again in the woods, but this time it was on all fours, keeping pace with me as I'm driving. I really start to freak out, so I roll up all of the windows and call my dad to let him know what's going on. Luckily, my dad answered, and I'm explaining this creature and that it's running alongside my truck as I'm driving. But as I'm describing the creature, I see it dart off into the woods, out of sight. I finished telling my dad what was going on, still pretty shaken from the whole experience. As I've said in the beginning, I've lived in the Appalachian Mountains my whole life, and I've never had an experience like this before. I've heard some pretty creepy stories, but never really believed anybody. But after that night, I have a whole new perspective when someone tells me a scary Appalachia story because I've been through one myself. When I got home that night, I thought about the story my granddad would tell us about the not deer and how the thing that I saw looked exactly how he described. So I started doing some research, and from the best I can tell, I definitely encountered a not deer that night. As much as I would like to say that the folklore of the Appalachian Mountains is just that, I can't explain what I saw, and anyone I tell the story to can't explain it either. But now I just wonder if Granddad saw a not deer as well, and I'm really curious to know how his story went. Thank you so much for taking the time to read this. It might sound crazy to some, but I know what I saw, and I really pray that I never see it again. So going back to the beginning where I'd mentioned that I'd never heard of this before, it is true, I've never heard of this in Appalachian folklore, so this was definitely a new one for me. But I ended up doing my own research after reading this story because I wasn't too sure what it was, so I did my own research, and it's something compared to a flesh pedestrian, if you will. Bear with me, I hate saying the other word, so flesh pedestrian will have to do on this series, but it is very creepy to me. But the part about it being on its hind legs, like I've known deer to stand up on their hind legs if they're trying to like reach something out of a tree to eat or something like that. But it to actually walk a good distance, 10 feet, they said, 10 feet walking on its hind legs and then chasing after them on its hind legs. That part sends shivers down my spine. They're trying to go down the road and take these curves as fast as they possibly can without flipping. And the deer, the not deer, runs beside it on all fours and it's keeping pace with the vehicle. That freaks me out. That freaks me out that it was keeping pace with them as they're driving down the road. No, absolutely not. But Clay, I do want to say that I'm so sorry you went through that. And I wholeheartedly believe you after doing some research and seeing some videos. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that that is something in the Appalachian Mountains. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can share it to the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.